Hello, this is Marianne, and for the next hour I will be reading articles from the March 2026 issue of the Buffalo Latino Village on the Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. Page 1. Community demands action after families detained near Buffalo Public Schools. Last month, after the Buffalo Immigrant and Refugee Defense issued a call to action, amplified by the Western New York Peace Center, parents, students, and community advocates gathered to demand that Buffalo Public Schools take immediate, concrete steps to protect immigrant and refugee families. The outcry followed alarming reports that neighbors had been detained near school grounds. According to BIRD, so the abbreviation of Buffalo Immigrant and Refugee Defense Watch, at least 2 individuals were taken into custody on or near a BPS campus, raising serious concerns about student safety during daily commutes. The news sent shockwaves through the Lower West Side and across the district. Families already struggling with language barriers, transportation challenges, and economic hardship suddenly faced a new and frightened threat, one that struck at the heart of what schools are meant to provide: safety and trust. In response, the community mobilized swiftly. At City Hall on February the 11th, residents demand that the school district make a clear and public commitment to protect every student and every family. Advocates outlined 4 urgent demands: a public safety promise. The community urged BPS to issue an unequivocal statement affirming that all students, regardless of immigration status, will be protected and that schools will remain safe spaces. Zero ICE access. Speakers called on the board to reaffirm a strict no-entry policy for ICE and any unauthorized personnel on school property, insisting that schools must remain off limits to federal enforcement actions. Fast-track arrival and dismissal plans. Parents requested immediate implementation of clear, safe entry and exit procedures to safeguard students during arrival and dismissal times, noting that fear and confusion were already affecting attendance. Remote bilingual learning options. Community leaders pressed for high-quality multilingual virtual learning alternatives for families who feel unsafe sending their children to school in person, emphasizing that no child should fall behind academically while their family seeks safety. Residents stressed that these were not abstract policy discussions but urgent life and death matters for hundreds of families. They called on BPS to set firm timelines, report progress publicly, and treat community safety as a non-negotiable responsibility. As of this writing, members of the Latino community, including the publisher of Buffalo Latino Village, are planning to form a Latino committee to address the ICE issue directly. Their goal is to collaborate with local businesses and community groups to protect immigrant and refugee families from what many in the community have described as an increasingly aggressive ICE presence, a resemblance of Germany's Gestapo. Buffalo Latino Village extends heartfelt gratitude to BIRD, BRRN, NYIC, and the Western New York Peace Center. We look forward to continued partnership and solidarity as we work together to safeguard and strengthen Buffalo's diverse communities. Next article, Willie Colon, the spirit of Cheche Cole. The Bronx-born son of Puerto Rican parents who helped invent the very sound we now call salsa passed away this past month. February 21st, 2026, he was 75 years old. His death closes a foundational chapter in Latin music, but his spirit will forever pulse through the barrios that shaped him and that he in turn helped to define. His passing marks the loss of one of salsa's most visionary architects, a musician whose trombone, swagger, and storytelling reshaped Latin music across generations. From his early work with Hector Lavoe to his later socially conscious collaborations, Colón created a sound that was gritty, elegant, and deeply tied to the lived experiences of Puerto Ricans and Latino diaspora. His music was never just a rhythm, it was identity, memory, and cultural survival carried through brass and drum. In Buffalo, his influence reached far beyond the turntables. For Puerto Ricans and Latinos building a home in western New York, Colón's songs became a cultural anchor, reminding elders of the island and reinforcing the ongoing responsibility to teach our youth the pride of their heritage. His music gave the community a shared soundtrack for celebration, resilience, and struggle. Nowhere was this more powerful than in Cheche Cole, a song rooted in an Afro-Ghanaian children's chant that Colón transformed into a New Yorican anthem. That African call and response, reborn through Caribbean savor and New York grit, resonated deeply on Buffalo's Lower West Side, where families recognized in it the echo of ancestral rhythms that traveled from Africa to the Caribbean and into the heart of the diaspora. In every urban Latino community where that chorus still sparks joy, Willie Colón's legacy continues to move, connect, and uplift. We cannot allow salsa to fade, be erased by colonialism or ignorance, or be overshadowed by commercialized trends that disconnect us from our roots. His passing reminds us that preserving this music is preserving ourselves, utilizing our roots to move forward. Page 3, The Power of Storytelling, The Road Less Traveled by Manuel Hernandez. I never imagined the road less traveled I was about to take when I saw Danielis Coriano put an acceptance letter of a Ford Foundation scholarship on the window of my classroom door at a high school in Central Florida in 2018. She was one out of 100 scholarships awarded that year, and her relocation story from Puerto Rico won her a 2000 scholarship. I was dumbfounded and in awe of the discovery. It was the beginning of a journey that started outside of the United States and found its way into a Central Florida classroom. The year before, I had created an after-school writing workshop. In the program, students learned how to write simple yet impactful narratives about their relocation experience to the United States. When I taught the classic of Plymouth Plantation, I started to compare the pilgrims' stories with the stories of the recently arrived teen immigrants. The differences were obvious, but the reasons and situations that paved the way for the teens of the 21st century to come to America had parallels that I used to spark interest, curiosity, and insight in the discussion of the language and rhetoric in the text. The discussion provided the framework to the writing workshop, while I taught an English language arts class for high school juniors. Danielis flashed the letter so that I could see it. When she caught my attention, I was silent and realized that I had discovered the power of storytelling. Hispanics have the largest population growth in public schools in the United States. By 2030, 40% of the K-12 grade population will be students whose native language may not be English. Registration data from the National Student Clearinghouse reveals a 5.3 decrease in the number of Latino undergraduates in spring 2021 compared to this same year in 2020. According to the Chronicle of Higher Education, the total number of first-year Latino students dropped 20% in the fall of 2020. The stories of these families and others must be shared and told for future generations to come. The secret of their success dwells in their stories and the power ingrained in every letter of their journey to America. These families moved to Florida looking for a better quality of life and a fresh start for a new beginning. Because their first language was not English, they registered in schools with a great desire to learn the language, but with developing English language skills that were met with academic challenges generally designed for native speakers of English. Over the years, my approach to storytelling has helped students secure over $1 million in scholarships. By aligning stories of pain, struggle, and success with common app prompts, students have gained confidence and clarity in their communication skills. This initiative has proven to be transformative both academically and personally. According to American anthropologist Margaret Mead, learning to speak a new language fluently depends largely on establishing genuine communication with the speakers of that language. This will occur when the speaker demonstrates understanding, respect, and perhaps even empathy toward the culture represented by the language. Discover the power of storytelling and build a bridge for the disadvantaged youth who believe they can create a future of their own in the United States. Meet the Buffalo Bills Foundation. The Buffalo Bills Foundation supports organizations that are committed to improving the quality of life in our region. This will be achieved through strengthening Western New York, through philanthropy, partnership, and community impact. The foundation continues to stand as one of the Western New York's most active and influential philanthropic forces. Its mission is simple yet powerful: to improve the quality of life across our region through strategic charitable investments and support for both NFL and team-driven community initiatives. A focus on hunger relief and healthy communities. At the heart of the Foundation's work is a commitment to addressing hunger and expanding access to nutritious food for families throughout Western New York. With nearly 1 in 5 children facing food insecurity, the need remains urgent. The Foundation partners with organizations that uplift local farmers, expand access to fresh foods, provide nutrition education, and strengthen workforce and organizational capacity in the food access sector. A year of record-breaking impact. As the Foundation reflects on an unforgettable year, gratitude is front and center. Thanks to the generosity of Bills fans, community partners, and supporters, 2025 marked a year of unprecedented growth and measurable impact. $2 million in community grants. Since 2020, the Buffalo Bills Foundation has distributed more than $9.5 million across Western New York through grant-making, community response efforts, and NFL Foundation programs. In 2025 alone, the Foundation surpassed the $2 million milestone in community grants, an achievement that underscores its expanding role in regional well-being. These investments support a wide range of initiatives including food access and hunger relief, nutrition and health education, local agriculture and community farm programs, workforce development, capacity building for nonprofit organizations. A question for our Latino community: with millions of philanthropic dollars flowing into Western New York, it is important for our communities, including Latino organizations, to understand where these resources are going and how they can participate. If your organization serves Latino families, youth, or neighborhoods, this is the moment to reach out, ask questions, and explore opportunities. These funds come from the broader community, including taxpayers and fans, so Latino organizations should feel empowered to connect with the foundation and learn how its programs might support your mission. Engagement begins with a simple step: start the conversation. The resources are there, the need is real, and the Latino community deserves full access to every opportunity that strengthens Western New York. Next article, Willy Colón, Siempre vivirás en nuestros corazones, por Angélica Aquino. Se nos fue entre el frío y la nieve, pero su legado y ritmo siempre mantendrá nuestras almas y corazones llenos de amor, pasión y humanidad. Su partida en medio del mes del amor y la amistad y en la antesala del mes de la mujer nos invita a seguir luchando y levantando la voz por la justicia social y la humanidad. Del Bronx para el mundo. Celebrarlo, compártenlo y continúa llevando la salsa como emblema de nuestra gran comunidad. Que descanse en paz. Page 4. Un momento justo por la paz, by Victoria Ross. The view from here, macro and micro organizing. Despite the above quote and the ways that the future isn't clear, there is a strong need for planning in directing our efforts toward the common good. We need to be taking steps with an idea of where they will lead us. Listening to our friends and neighbors, hearing the news, both what's reported and what's not being reported, is crucial. Naturally, the news generates strong feelings of anger, fear, outrage, and more. The authoritarian element at the helm is acting without regard for law, justice, or morality. We have seen these behaviors get increasingly outrageous. Last month, we talked about what this moment requires of us: courage, truth, and love, willingness to be uncomfortable. What are some of the routes that our activism can take? First, we know that the voices of the people most heavily impacted are the ones we need to be listening to. We also need to hear from the people already engaged in the work. This by itself opens avenues. Also, we all have different situations, abilities, and responsibilities. These and other factors help determine what might be the best ways for us to contribute to collective efforts to keep our community safe. Successful movements for social change generally are well organized, include large and diverse cross-sections of the people, use a wide range of non-violent strategies, and are successful in converting some regime supports to their side. Organizing is vital. It can take different forms. Two contrasting but linked spheres are the macro and the micro. For example, mass mobilization and deep neighborhood community engagement. Mass mobilization includes large gatherings such as No Kings, the women's marches, etc. The most recent large, excellent local rallies have been put together by Buffalo United Coalition, a strong and active coalition of some 40 and more labor and community groups. Getting many thousands out into the streets is very significant. Other possibilities for mass mobilization include general strikes, work slowdowns, and/or boycotts. Deep neighborhood community engagement is also needed. This includes deep canvassing, going door to door, neighbor by neighbor, block by block. This is the rapid response work, the mutual aid work, building trust and substantial relationships. There are lots of efforts of this type as well. Block clubs, Buffalo Rapid Response Network, Buffalo Immigrant and Refugee Defense, the Visibility Brigade, Disaster Preparedness. Many different efforts are going on. The Western New York Peace Center is proud to work with many of these groups, with more to follow. If you are not connected with the mass mobilization work or the community building work, please track down any of the above mentioned groups, including wnypeace.org, and keep moving forward. Next article, Investing in Ourselves by Virginia McIntyre, Women in History, Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman, born Araminta Ross, born on March 1822 and passed away on March 10, 1913, was an American abolitionist and social activist. After escaping slavery, Tubman made some 13 missions to rescue approximately 70 enslaved people, using the network of anti-slavery activists and safe houses known collectively as the Underground Railroad. During the Civil War, she served as an armed scout and spy for the Union Army. In her later years, Tubman was an activist for women's suffrage. Born into slavery, Tubman was beaten and whipped by enslavers as a child. Early in life, she suffered a traumatic head wound when an irate overseer threw a heavy metal weight, intending to hit another slave, but hit her instead. The injury caused dizziness, pain, and spells of hypersomnia, which occurred throughout her life. After her injury, Tubman began experiencing strange visions and vivid dreams, which she ascribed to premonitions from God. These experiences, combined with her Methodist upbringing, led her to become devotedly religious. In 1849, Tubman escaped to Philadelphia, only to return to Maryland to rescue her family soon after. Slowly, one group at a time, she brought relatives with her out of the state and eventually guided dozens of other enslaved people to freedom. Tubman, or Moses as she was called, traveled by night and in extreme secrecy, and later said she never lost a passenger. After the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850 was passed, she helped guide escapees farther north into Canada and helped newly freed people find work. Tubman met John Brown in 1858 and helped him plan and recruit supporters for his 1859 raid on Harper's Ferry. When the Civil War began, Tubman worked for the Union Army, first as a cook and nurse, and then as an armed scout and spy. For her guidance of the raid at Combahee Ferry, which liberated more than 700 enslaved people, she is widely credited as the first woman to lead an armed military operation in the United States. After the war, she retired to the family home on property she had purchased in 1859 in Auburn, New York, where she cared for her aging parents. She was active in the women's suffrage movement until illness overtook her and was admitted to a home for elderly African Americans, which she has helped establish years earlier. Tubman is commonly viewed as an icon of courage and freedom. Next article, Luis Rodriguez receives the 2026 Dr. Martin Luther King's Business of the Year Award. This past month, the Concerned Citizens of Buffalo presented Luis Rodriguez, founder and publisher of La Última Hora, the oldest Latino monthly publication serving Buffalo's Lower West Side, with the 2026 Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Business of the Year Award, honoring his long-standing contributions as a publisher, business owner, and community leader. Rodriguez has been active on Buffalo's West Side for many years, contributing to neighborhood stability through steady employment, reliable service, and consistent involvement in community efforts. The organization noted his commitment to fairness and his willingness to assist residents and local programs when needed. Rodriguez is an old guard. He was an active member of Poder, the student organization at UB, a member of the Puerto Rican Chicano Committee, and a leading editor of the Latin Journal, the first Latino publication in Buffalo, New York during the 1970s. Rodriguez's son, by the same name, is founder and president of Rodriguez Construction Group, a certified minority-owned business based in Buffalo, New York, and presently working on the Hispanic Heritage Institute on Hudson and Niagara Street. Luis retired from city government, where he led the Office of Equal Opportunity under Mayor Brown. However, he continues his community affairs activities as the Chief Diversity Officer at Rodriguez Construction Group. In accepting the MLK Award, Rodriguez thanked the concerned citizens of Buffalo and emphasized the importance of local businesses working together to strengthen Buffalo's neighborhoods. The annual MLK Award highlights individuals whose work reflects the spirit of service, responsibility, and dedication to the people's well-being. What happened in the Super Bowl? Bad Bunny's appearance on the Super Bowl stage was more than a celebrity cameo. It was a seismic moment of visibility for Puerto Ricans who have long felt erased or misunderstood in the broader American narrative. Seeing a Boricua artist singing in unapologetic Puerto Rican Spanish and carrying the rhythm, swagger, and ancestral echoes of Borinquen onto one of the world's biggest stages affirmed a people who have endured colonial neglect, migration struggles, and cultural stereotyping. For many Puerto Ricans on the island and across the diaspora, his performance wasn't just entertainment, it was a declaration that their identity, language, and history, Taino, African, and Spanish intertwined, belong at the center of global culture, not at its margins. It was pride, resistance, and representation wrapped in music. Next article, The Militarization of the Caribbean by Eri Alvarado. When people hear militarization, they imagine a base, a flag, a ship, a war. But militarization is far broader. It includes interdiction, surveillance, and joint training. It hides behind terms like security cooperation, and restricted access. It turns ports into chess squares, airspace into leverage, and the sea into a border wall. It is the normalization of force. What we are witnessing today is not random. It is not simply crime, drugs, humanitarian intervention, or national security. It is a wave, and to understand this wave, we must see the older ones. The Caribbean did not suddenly become strategic in 2025. It has been treated as strategic for decades. Since the 1960s, the region has been treated like the U.S. front yard. In 1965, the United States sent more than 22,000 troops to the Dominican Republic, officially to prevent a communist dictatorship and avoid another Cuba. But military histories make clear this was not just about defense, it was about political outcomes. The Navy's own records state that political concerns were paramount and that force was used as a political instrument in the Caribbean. Through the Cold War, the region became a containment zone. The Bay of Pigs, the Cuban Missile Crisis, the Dominican occupation, Grenada, and Panama were all framed as U.S.-Sovietic competition. In that first wave, the language was communism, but reality was control. When the Cold War ended, many assumed militarization ended too. It didn't. It was rebranded. Large invasions became less common, but the security footprint became more structural, professionalized, and permanent. The new justification became drugs, counter-narcotics, operations provided cover for patrols, surveillance, training, and enforcement architecture. Even when tensions lessen, the shadow remains. You get a managed peace, a peace where the region is watched, the sea is policed, and the Caribbean remains a zone to be controlled for someone else's stability. Now we have entered a new wave, China. The simple narrative is China expands, the US panics, militarization spikes. But China's influence is not about troops landing on islands. It is about infrastructure and leverage, ports, financing, ownership stakes, operations, and technology. The Center for Strategic and International Studies argues that Chinese port projects create strategic vulnerabilities even without formal bases. Deep involvement can mean intelligence collection, privileged access to logistics data, and the ability to deny or delay access during a crisis. People say it's just business, but empires don't see ports as business. They see ports as power. China's security engagement also differs from traditional US military partnerships. America's quarterly notes that China's global security initiative focuses on policing, surveillance, and governance support, not just military to military ties. China steps in economically and through security adjacent systems, and the US interprets that as the backyard changing hands. Now to current events. Puerto Rico and Dominican Republic, Venezuela and Cuba, NPR highlights the contradiction. China advances economically while the US reaches for military tools, but gunboat diplomacy can only accomplish so much. Cuba shows how old tensions never fully died. The Cold War simply froze into sanctions and pressure. The Associated Press reports Russia urging the US not to impose a sea blockade as Cuba faces fuel shortages, describing US pressure on oil flows and threats against countries selling oil to Cuba. Russia now openly defies the US, sending tankers through the blockade. In this context, oil ships become symbols of defiance and interdiction becomes an escalation. This is how water becomes a battlefield without anyone declaring a war. Militarization also reshapes culture and immigration. It changes what is normal, what gets funded, what gets guarded, and what gets abandoned. Vieques is the clearest example. The Library of Congress documents how the 1999 bombing death of David Sanes reignited protests that forced the Navy to close its facility after decades. The EPA reports contamination from bombing ranges, munitions storage, and unexploded ordnance. Militarization leaves physical residue, but also cultural residue. The feeling that home is conditional, that land is not fully yours, that bodies are collateral. Migration is another consequence. When the region destabilizes, people move and are treated as threats rather than symptoms. The Migration Policy Institute describes historic migration levels reshaping Latin America and the Caribbean, especially flows of Venezuelans, Haitians, and Cubans. Research links this directly to militarization. Confining people on island military bases under the language of humanitarian rescue or migration management merges migration with enforcement. Migration becomes governance, policy, and even a market. In a militarized region, migration becomes one more justification for expanding force. This is the script. The name changes, the structure does not. A few months ago, it was Venezuela, now it's Cuba. The United States doesn't start wars, it starts stories. It chokes economies and calls it pressure. It restricts imports and medicine and calls it policy. It destabilizes funds proxies stirs chaos, then points to the chaos as proof of instability. It lights the fire, blocks the exits, and then shows up with cameras while blocking the firefighters. It funds genocide with one breath and preaches human rights with the next. It cries about democracy while backing dictators who keep markets open and labor cheap. It invokes international law until it applies to the United States. When power feels threatened, it tightens control. When legitimacy collapses, force expands. When elites feel exposed, they don't become moral, they become strategic. One of the empire's oldest strategies is to redirect public attention toward security threats, emergencies, and enemies while extraction continues. The Caribbean is experiencing another wave of militarization, but it is not a new story. The Cold War wave was about communism. The post-Cold War wave was about drugs and security architecture. The current wave is about great power competition, ports, infrastructure, surveillance, and leverage, especially with China's expanding influence and the US threatening that as a threat to its stronghold. Old Cold War remnants still linger. Cuba, Russia, fuel flows, and blockade logic creeping back into the sea. The cost is not paid by presidents, generals, or investors. It is paid by the people who live where the ships pass, by the people whose ports become strategic, by the people whose islands get repurposed, by the people who migrate because their countries collapse and who are treated like criminals for trying to leave. Yes, the region is on fire. Yes, political games are unfolding, but beneath the game lies the truth. This is not just about security, it is about control of strategic space, and the Caribbean has always been strategic space. Next article, Connecting the Latino Economic Dots, Understanding the West Side Bazaar, a community-powered incubator for global entrepreneurs, by Alberto O. Capas. The West Side Bazaar in Buffalo is not a privately owned business in the traditional sense. Instead, it is operated by the Westminster Economic Development Initiative, a non-profit organization dedicated to supporting immigrant, refugee, and low-income entrepreneurs. Through affordable space, business training, and hands-on support, WEDI has transformed the bazaar into one of the Buffalo's most vibrant multicultural marketplaces, and we are glad that Latino businesses are part of this organization. We would love to see even more Latino entrepreneurs take advantage of this opportunity. The West Side Bazaar reflects the kind of vision that El Batey Puerto Rican Center pursued on the Upper West Side in Riverside when it organized La Placita Market. El Batey invited Latino businesses to promote and sell their products, food, arts, and cultural items in a community-based market setting. The project lasted several months, but the concept did not fully catch on, and unfortunately, El Batey had to cancel La Placita. Today, many of the Latino businesses that once took part in El Batey's Placita Market are now participating in and benefiting from the West Side Bazaar. The bazaar itself is not owned by a single individual. WEDI manages the building, the programming, and the overall incubator model. Individual vendors own and operate their own businesses. Each stall, whether a restaurant, retail shop, or artisan booth, is independently run by its entrepreneur. WEDI provides the platform. The vendors bring their culture, recipes, products, and creativity. This model has helped many small businesses launch, grow, and eventually expand into brick-and-mortar locations across Western New York. Notable vendor owners and entrepreneurs: There are over 30 vendors, past and newcomers, providing a variety of products and services from arts, culture, and food, plus more, representing a global diversity long established and well-known vendors. These elements reflect WEDI's broader mission to create economic opportunities, nurture entrepreneurship, and build a multicultural community hub on Buffalo's west side. A living example of Buffalo's global identity. The West Side Bazaar continues to grow as a launchpad for entrepreneurs who bring their heritage, recipes, and craftsmanship to Buffalo. Each vendor represents a personal journey, often beginning with immigration or resettlement, and each business adds to the cultural richness of the city. This is one of many major opportunities that have passed over our heads and over our community. For example, during the first big wave of gentrification on the Lower West Side, outside buyers, mostly white and more financially resourced, purchased homes from Latino families at bargain prices, often between 1/3 and 1/2 of what similar properties would later sell for after renovation. Many of the houses were then rehabilitated and resold at markups of 100 to 200%, translating into profits of $50,000 or $150,000 per house for new owners and investors. El Batey Puerto Rican Center was on the right track, and sooner or later we will get there. The point is that too many Latino leaders continue to host major events in non-Latino institutions, leaving the economic potential of our community on the sidelines. While these events may raise visibility, they often bypass Latino-owned venues, organizations, and businesses that desperately need and deserve this support. The Puerto Rican Latino Parade is also a classic example. It should remain on Niagara Street so that local businesses can generate income on that day, and organizers should actively develop ways to incorporate neighborhood residents, giving them opportunities to market and sell their own products as part of the celebration. If we are serious about empowerment, we must integrate economic strategy into our cultural and political work. That means intentionally using Latino institutions, organizations to sponsor, host, and co-produce events and programs, ensuring that the dollars generated by our community circulate within our community. This was a summary of the article. Page 6. The soul is not manufactured by machine. El alma no se fabrica en máquina. By Dianís Román Rodríguez. En un mundo donde todo parece producirse con rapidez, donde la eficiencia muchas veces supera la intención y lo inmediato reemplaza lo significativo, surge una pregunta necesaria: ¿qué significa realmente ser artesano? Históricamente, el artesano no era simplemente alguien que hacía objetos, era guardián de técnicas, narrador de historias y portador de identidad cultural. Antes de la industrialización, cada pieza, desde una talla en madera hasta un instrumento musical, nacía de las manos de alguien que había aprendido su oficio por tradición familiar o por enseñanza directa de maestro a aprendiz. El tiempo invertido no era un obstáculo, era parte esencial del valor de la obra. Con la revolución industrial, la producción cambió para siempre. Las máquinas comenzaron a fabricar en serie lo que antes se hacía pieza por pieza. La manufactura trajo accesibilidad y volumen, pero también transformó la relación entre el creador y el objeto. El producto dejó de tener rostro. Se multiplicó, pero perdió singularidad. Ante ese cambio surgieron voces que defendieron el trabajo manual y la dignidad del artesano. No se trataba de rechazar el progreso, sino de recordar que la belleza también habita en lo imperfecto, en la variación humana, en la marca única que deja una mano sobre la madera, la tela o el barro. En Puerto Rico, la artesanía es mucho más que decoración. es memoria viva. Son los santos tallados cuidadosamente, las máscaras de gigantes que celebran nuestra herencia cultural, el mundillo tejido con paciencia y el cuadro puertorriqueño que acompaña nuestra música. Cada pieza lleva generaciones de conocimiento acumulado. Un ejemplo claro de esta defensa del trabajo manual es el santero puertorriqueño Celestino Avilés, reconocido por su dedicación a la talla tradicional de santos y especialmente de los Reyes Magos. Su proceso no depende de producción mecanizada, depende del pulso, del tiempo y del respeto por la tradición. Cada rostro que talla tiene una expresión distinta. Cada pieza refleja la intención del momento en que fue creada. Esa singularidad no puede replicarse en serie. Hoy enfrentamos un nuevo desafío. En un mercado competitivo y acelerado, muchas piezas producidas con maquinaria o procesos automatizados se presentan como artesanía. La tecnología puede ser herramienta, pero cuando el proceso elimina la intervención consciente y directa del artesano, debemos preguntarnos, ¿seguimos hablando de artesanía o de manufactura? La manufactura busca eficiencia y repetición. El artesano busca permanencia y significado. La máquina puede replicar una forma exacta cientos de veces. El artesano interpreta cada pieza como irrepetible. La máquina produce objetos. El artesano produce identidad. Defender la artesanía no es oponerse al avance tecnológico. Es defender el valor del proceso humano. Es recordar que el tiempo invertido no es una pérdida, sino una inversión cultural. Es comprender que el conocimiento transmitido de generación en generación no puede sustituirse con un botón. Ser artesano es sostener una tradición con responsabilidad. Es trabajar con paciencia cuando el mundo exige prisa. Es crear desde la conexión profunda con la materia y con la historia que esa materia representa. Es entender que cada pieza lleva intención, comunidad y memoria. Cuando apoyamos al artesano auténtico, no solo adquirimos un objeto, apoyamos una herencia cultural, apoyamos manos que resistan la producción despersonalizada, apoyamos identidad. Porque al final, la diferencia no está solo en cómo se hace una pieza, sino en desde dónde se hace. Y el alma, esa esencia invisible que conecta pasado, presente y futuro, no se fabrica en máquina. Next article, meet Dina Aponte, artist, writer, community activist. My story begins with my parents, who came from Puerto Rico seeking opportunities and a better life. I grew up as an original Lower West Sider in the early 1970s, living at 220 Virginia Street, right next to Joe's store on the corner of Virginia and Whitney Place. Those years were marked by both struggle and awakening. I witnessed firsthand the civil rights tensions that erupted into a major riot, an experience that shaped my understanding of justice, identity, and the resilience of Buffalo's Latino community. At a young age, art and writing were my constant companions. I was among the first students to attend School 76, now known as the Herman Bilingual School. There I was guided by exceptional educators, Mrs. Rodriguez, Miss Hernandez, and Miss Lube, who taught me to read and write in both English and Spanish and instilled in me a deep appreciation for Puerto Rican culture. My cultural pride blossomed early. I performed in a school play about the discovery of Puerto Rico, taking on the role of announcing Christopher Columbus' arrival onto the island. I also danced in one of Buffalo's first and original Puerto Rican parades, taught by Sonia, a cultural instructor from New York City who shared traditional dances with us as students. I remember dancing with joy and pride as La Tierra del Borinquen echoed through the community. Years later, I continued to uplift my heritage through the written word. I became a monthly columnist for Buffalo Latino Village, where my voice, insight, and cultural passion reached readers across Western New York. The Latino Village encouraged my artistic and literary pursuits, providing a platform for my work to flourish. Today, I remain a proud daughter of Puerto Rico, a storyteller shaped by Buffalo's West Side, and a cultural voice whose journey reflects the spirit and strength of our Latino community. View my art pieces and let me know what you think. The next is an announcement. Attention Latino artists and authors, writers, don't hide your work. There is a purpose behind your drawing, writing discipline, investing in picking up a pen or pencil, taking the time to think, create, and introduce your vision to the community, to the world. If you say you're a writer and you write, you are a writer. If you say you are an artist and you paint, you are an artist. Share your work with us. We will provide a platform that opens the door for your voice, images, and creativity. Email your written work to latinovillage1@gmail.com. Email your artwork images to lwslatinoartgallery@gmail.com. Let your talent be seen. Let your story be heard. Page 8 has several announcements. People Inc. Senior Living accepting applications. Affordable, safe, and maintenance-free apartments throughout Western New York for independent older adults age 62 and up who are income eligible. The locations Amherst, Angola, Blastel, Cheektowaga, Clarence, Grand Island, Hamburg, Lackawanna, Lockport, North and South Buffalo, Springville, West Seneca, Whitfield, Gowanda. For income eligibility and apartment application or assistance with application process, email housing@people-inc.org or call 716-880-3890. La solicitud de apartamentos están disponibles también en español. Next announcement, Northland Workforce Training Center. We have 3,000 jobs to fill. Schedule your free pre-enrollment session. For more information, please call 716-436-3229 or go to northlandwtc.org. Announcement on page 10. Let us gather in a flourishing way, an exhibition of contemporary Latinx painting from March the 6th until September the 6th, 2026 at the Buffalo AKG Art Museum. The last page has an announcement. Los artistas del barrio Buffalo open mic en el barrio every third of Thursday, starting at 7 p.m. The next session will be March 19th. The event is held at the El Museo Francisco Oller y Diego Rivera, 91 Allen Street, Buffalo, New York, hosted by Dr. Michelle Agosto and Julio Montalvo Valentin. This event is open to all poets. Sign up at the door. Highly encourage Latinos to come out and show us what you got. Spanish, English, bilingual Spanglish submissions are accepted. Music, refreshments, positive vibes. You have been listening to a reading of articles and features from the March 2026 issue of the Buffalo Latino Village. Your reader has been Mary Ann. Thank you for listening.